This is Chris Kell with the fourth installment of our Peak Trader 1 series, Anatomy of a Training Session. All right, so far we've talked about client assessments, client needs, looking at coaching clients, and now we shift to the organizational part of the equation. And the biggest thing is, and what I say to clients or trainers all the time, is that we could learn and acquire as much information as we want. We can be as smart as we want, and we can find the coolest exercises and the best conditioning schemes and reps and everything else. But if we can't fit it into a system that is time efficient, all of that information is lost. So this is possibly the most important presentation because this shows you how to organize this into a logistically possible session, and that is going to be the most important thing. It's going to help you to get as much into your session as physically possible. Now, what we want to do with this training session is discuss the logistics of how a training session runs. I want you to put aside exercise selection, what you're going to do in that session for a minute, and just think about what a session is comprised of. What is most important to get in for the general population clients, and how do we do it in a time-effective manner? Then we could start to think, because that is a system, all right? Then we can start to think about how we can utilize methods and start to insert tools into this system to get what we need specifically. So we want to talk about how we could break this process down into a universal template that can not only be used for your beginner general population client, but clients of all types. And that's the biggest thing, is if you're coaching clients of all types and needs, we need a standardized system that we can utilize to train back to back and to get efficient results with every individual that we train and come into contact with. So necessity, and I want people to realize that this concept, the way that I train and the way that I put my programs together, was born out of necessity. All right, and when we think about this, I opened my gym in 2008, right around the time the economy crashed, and we went from around 65 clients to about 23 very, very quickly. All right, when we first got there, everybody was doing one-on-one personal training. They were walking on treadmills for 10 minutes to warm up, and it was really, really inefficient. And the problem with that is that we were not offering a product that was unique or different in any way. And if we look at all of these products, okay, we have P90X, we have the Subway breakfast, and we have McDonald's coffee. Before the economy crashed, these were all businesses that these companies didn't really touch. McDonald's didn't do coffee, all right? Subway was a sub place, didn't do breakfast whatsoever. And P90X is something that really didn't exist, or in large part before that time. Home workouts, kind of doing this without a gym. But all of these things successfully branded themselves because of a niche that existed in the marketplace. All right, when the economy crashed and when people started to lose their shirts, literally, these companies started to see that we need to expand out and find unique niches, ways that we can make our product better, and really work on the quality of what we do. And all of these things, this McDonald's coffee, this Subway breakfast, and yes, even P90X, have been extremely lucrative and successful because they filled a niche that wasn't previously being addressed. All right, and that's exactly what we want to do when we talk about this concept of program design. So in 2008, when we first opened our gym, personal training was being sold in packages. Clients would come in, they would pay session to session. The longest package that I think we had at that time was like 10 sessions. So basically you're paying somebody that is your friend and is talking to you for an hour and is also going to be training you. Right? They were doing things like chest and back days, waiting 2 to 3 minutes between exercises, talking to their trainer, and then the trainer would conveniently go put them on a treadmill while he checked his phone or whatever it may be. It was very inefficient. People didn't really think too much about it, and it was a successful model at the time because people had that disposable income. Fast forward to 2013, and that just is not the case whatsoever. For us, everything that we do is about helping the person to self-actualize and positioning ourselves as a long-term prospect versus a short-term fix, because that's exactly the way that personal training was perceived before the economy crashed. It was a luxury service, and it's like your Maserati or your expensive watches or whatever it may be. That's the first thing to go. Okay, you're the first person on the chopping block if that's the way that you're viewed as a trainer. So conversely, we have to look at this as a long-term prospect, and we've talked a lot about this in our previous presentations. But the first thing that we want to do in terms of sales process, if for no other reason, is to sit down with the client and figure out what their long-term goals are, and then focus on lifestyle change versus just working on their chest and back that day or whatever. It's about a long-term program, and we want to put that up front and say, look, if you're going to do this right and you want to see appreciable change, it's going to take at least 8 to 12 weeks. And I want you to put your money where their mouth is and commit to that. We set specific goals based upon that cycle, and then we write a program for that length of time. And that's why program design is always going to be position you as a more successful trainer, because you know exactly what the person will be doing. Certainly you're always going to make corrections, but the point is that you get a plan, you discuss the plan with the person, you get their approval, and then everybody is on the same page, okay? And it suddenly allows you to, become the scholar, create a great program, and everybody's happy. Program design is about teaching the client to train. We're doing full body workouts, all right? Generally, our clients train with us 2 to 3 days a week. We're going to give them some stuff to do in their off days, but we found that full body workouts for people that are looking to train body composition or just to look and feel better, and this is the typical general population client you're going to see, is going to predominate versus body part splits, all right? Just because they're more efficient and they allow us to get more out of our workouts. Individualized programs are going to rule the day. We write programs for each client, we sit down and we consult each client, and that's the model that I want you to think about, because that is what is going to position you as a coach versus a trainer. And most importantly, the client needs to be moving around at all times, right? They need to perceive that you can help them. So if you're talking to them and their heart rate is not up and they're not sweating the whole time, the reality is that you're not doing your job well enough, right? So we leave no time to spare. Even when the client is resting between 2 heavy exercises, we're having them do some sort of a filler, whether it be doing a wall slide to mobilize their upper back or a Spider-Man to work on their hips, whatever it may be, there's no time left to spare. So let's look at this, all right, our pros and cons. First and foremost, this new model is fast and efficient. Okay, it's going to allow you to vastly improve what we call training density in terms of what you can get into the workout. All right, it's very dense. You can pack a lot of stuff in, and that's exactly what we want. All right, and with that, you're also going to be able to charge more. All right, and position yourself better. This model also works very well for small group training, all right, because again, it's efficient. You could have one person doing A1 workout, the next person could be doing the leg exercise, and the third person could be doing the filler, and you could rotate them through in that way. So this is something that is going to appeal to group sessions, because it's fast-paced, it's something that people move through, and there's no time left to spare, so the person doesn't really have time to think about, oh, this sucks, or whatever it may be, because they're doing stuff the whole time, and we want to occupy the person's time and occupy their minds. The cons are, if you don't have a plan, you don't allocate your time properly, there's less room for error, and it's potential disaster. The more stuff you put in it, the greater the possibility of it getting out of control. So we just have to look at that and really have a specific plan. So the keys to success with our program. Number one, we want to plan the program out not over a session-to-session basis, but 4 to 8 weeks. Certainly you're going to make changes based upon whatever the client is dealing with that day, but when you template things out, you know the general category of what the person is doing. For example, in my first circuit, if I have an upper body pushing exercise and a lower body pulling exercise, maybe the upper body push is just an exercise working client's pushing muscles. Maybe they're doing an overhead press that day. Okay, if they hurt their shoulder though, we might be able to sub a band press in. All right, it's a different exercise, but we're working the same muscles, so therefore we're getting the same basic training effects. All right, and that allows us to make substitutions on the fly without having to restructure everything else. So creating categories is going to be one of the crucial things that we talk about. And the other thing is that be a coach, demonstrate form, show up early to set up, and always have a plan A and B. That's the biggest thing, especially in a commercial gym, is that we know what we're doing before we do it. We show up, set up, we kind of get the lay of the land, we understand what could potentially go wrong, as well as reserve our necessary equipment. So what are some important elements of a training session? Number one, flexibility and mobility. It's all well and good to assess somebody, but in order to really make that count, you have to make that a strong part of your program and a dedicated part of your program. And we're going to spend anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes working on flexibility, going through an active warm-up with our clients, making sure they're able to move through these ranges of motion before we load them up so we get mobile. Number two is power and movement, and this is kind of the next step from our mobility, because now we're moving through ranges of motion in a faster way. We're training the client to use their nervous system. We're training powerful contractions, and as we'll talk about, this is a key thing for clients of all ages to prevent falls, to improve just their reaction time, and it's something that clients of all ages can use because we lose power or our reaction, our ability to prevent against falls at about twice the rate that we lose strength as we age. Number three is strength training. All right, this is your traditional push-ups, bench press, squats, whatever it may be. We're doing full body workouts. The purpose is to get strong. All right, bottom line, we're trying to get the client stronger. We're trying to increase the force that they're able to lift so they're more functional whatever they're doing. Number four is going to be conditioning. That could be anything from interval training to circuits to 100 burpees. I really pity that client that day. But whatever you choose, that is going to be an integral part of the session. And then we also have prehab, all right, which is talking about getting the client fortified, working on smaller stabilizer muscles. And you can see that if we look at all of these things is kind of like in a larger picture, this is the stuff, this is fitness, okay? This is really what a full palette of fitness looks like. And this is something that we want our client doing throughout the training week. The reality is that we have 60 minutes probably twice a week with a client. If we assume that they do nothing else, we need to get all of this stuff in order to give them the full experience. And it is possible, but this is the big picture. This is the stuff that we feel is most important that we need to spend some time on. So once we kind of have our pie, what we're going to be working on that day, we talk about time allocation. All right, I'm going to say, all right, so this client is somebody that needs to work on strength. I'm going to allocate 30 minutes to that. So that's the biggest piece of the pie. They also have a weight loss goal, so I'm going to allocate 15 minutes conditioning. All right, they're also fairly immobile, so we're warming up for pretty heavy lifting. So I'm going to spend 15 minutes doing mobility. As you can see, the majority of our template remains the same for all clients, but this pie could change kind of based upon the individual. We just write in the time allocation based upon what we need to do after we've created their assessments. So section number one, mobility. We've talked a lot about this, but the first step is going to be foam rolling. We teach all of our clients a standard warm-up before they come in that we ask that even they're showing up 5 to 10 minutes early to do their foam rolling so we can jump immediately into a dynamic warm-up once the session begins. We want to do mobility drills before we move to before we do our workout, because we want to explore those full range of motion so they have that when they're squatting or pressing overhead or whatever it may be. My biggest thing is teach your clients a standard routine to save time. I'm all for changing exercises, but we need to understand the basics first. So if they do that and they ask you, or they come in even 5 minutes late and say, what do I do for warm-up? Well, you say, well, do the warm-up that we taught you. Okay, and you just have to drill that again and again and again, and eventually they're going to understand. So even when you change warm-up drills in the future, which will inevitably happen, you say, do the standard warm-up that we taught you, and they'll know what you're talking about. You just have to hammer that home for, up to a month, 2 months, whatever it takes until they understand. And for us, that comes in a beginner and an advanced version. Our beginner client warm-up, we've alluded to this some in our previous presentations, is just a simple foam rolling routine followed by mobilizations that are performed primarily in the ground. All of these things are designed to mobilize the area, to drive mobility and stability to the proper joints, and to clear up postural issues, and flexibilities that the client may have. This circuit, in my experience, has been proven to clear up anywhere from 80 to 90% of just the common complaints that clients have. It's great because I can have them do it quickly, I can teach it to them, and then I could say, I want you to do this for homework as well. This is the first step. this is something that we're teaching all of our beginner clients before we ever go into anything else. So this is step one when we get a warm up. Once our clients are fairly well versed in the ground-based drills, once they've gained a bit of coordination, and you'll see that some people in the beginning really won't be able to squat at all. You'll give them a more complicated exercise, and it just looks like they're doing a bad dance move where they plug themselves into a light socket. I mean, they just don't have those movement patterns yet. So the ground-based stuff really helps to build basic coordination as well. And then once we have that, we can move to standing positions where now, we're doing things like our squat to stand, where the client grabs their ankles and sits back on their heels. And literally, it does kind of look like a bad dance move, as well as split squats, inchworms. So these are working a greater area of muscle. But again, the client has kind of worked out some kinks already. So this is a good warm up to do to warm us up for more integrated things, and something that we teach our clients after they've been with us for a little while. Our next section is going to be power. So once we've gone through our dynamic warm-up, we want to move immediately into into work that is training the nervous system. Okay, and what I want you to realize is that when we're doing jumps and we're throwing things and we have these reactions that last 1 to 2 seconds, we're not really working the muscles as much as we are priming the nervous system to produce force. All right, and what that means is that the nervous system is kind of the governor of all movement. Your nervous system controls your ability to react to cues, to protect against falls, to break your fall maybe if you trip. All of that does come down to reaction time, and that's something much different than training our muscles. All right, the goal of power work is the ability to produce force in the least amount of time. That applies to athletes the same as it applies to our 90-year-old clients. The exercises might be different, but the concept is the same. In my opinion, everyone can use this, right? Because it's an injury prevention device more than anything else, and it makes us more efficient. So the question is, what is a power exercise? We have a high pull here on the top left. We have a medicine ball slam. We have somebody doing a jump rope, and then we have a lady bounding here. And my answer would be all of these things are power drills. All of these produce high amounts of force. They have to be moved. They involve quick movement. They often involve ballistic movement. So the difference is they're just scaled for the population. They just involve producing higher or lower amounts of force. But it's all about speed and producing that as quickly as possible. So we get into these examples. Whereas a senior client might be doing something like a medicine ball slam, which in my opinion is a very safe exercise, along with something where they're maybe tapping their toes through a speed ladder and working on balance. Our college baseball player is doing broad jumps and hiding jumps, whereas our college soccer player might be doing overhead soccer throws, split jumps, and then working on moving in multiple planes of motion with a multiplanar lunge. And that's the biggest thing, is that the power and movement is going to exist along the same continuum. So I might do 2 power exercises followed by some sort of a movement drill where I'm teaching the person to become better at some sort of a movement. All right, those 2 things are the same. All right, and we want to do these the first thing in the session when the client is freshest, because they are most important, and we want to train them first to optimize motor learning. The client is always going to be able to do stuff that involves the nervous system best in the very beginning, because once we start getting into heavy lifting and different things throughout the session, they become fatigued. So just like we want to lift the heaviest weight first, we want to do jumping, movement type training before we get into our weightlifting, simply because we become fatigued after that, and the ability to train that becomes suboptimal. So think training the nervous system versus training the muscles here. This doesn't require a huge number of reps. We're looking at like 5 to 7 reps maybe. It's just moving as quickly as we can, and then just working on whatever specific needs that person has as well. So our third section, all right, strength training, and this is kind of the thing that we think of when we talk about personal training or working out at a gym is doing bis and tris or working strength or whatever it may be. But really, for our purposes, we're talking about full body workouts versus body part splits. All right, and the idea is that for general population clients, and that's really who we're addressing here, we're training movements versus muscles. If you want to look good on the beach, if you're training for a figure or bodybuilding show, you need to be doing body part splits. All right, back and biceps and chest and triceps, things of that nature are always going to define muscles much better, and it's going to help the person to look better. Okay, that is the bottom line. So in that situation, you're training the muscles versus movement. But when it comes to just function in daily life and training clients of all types whose need is to maybe pick up their grandchild or to play soccer with their son or whatever it may be, we want to train, and training athletes for that matter, we want to train movements versus muscles. So I want you to think about an upper body pushing exercise being all the muscles that produce that movement in our body. All right, certainly we're working the chest, but we're also working the triceps, the deltoids, and whatever other muscle involves that. Okay, upper body pulling is the opposite. We're just working the motion itself. Whatever muscles are active during that time will be worked. But it's not so important to think about isolating the quadratus lumborum. It just doesn't, it's not relevant to this person's situation. We want to train their movement patterns, and everything gets worked in that situation. And that fits a little bit better into this idea of full body workouts versus split routines. So for us, what we're doing is circuiting these things out. Okay, we're training 3 to 4 exercises as a circuit versus doing like a bench press and then waiting for 2 minutes and doing it again. That is going to increase, again, the training density, where we get in a lot of stuff into a shorter amount of time, so we can pack in more and work on more specific needs. So again, getting back to the movements versus muscles, push would be, a push-up, a bench press, a floor dumbbell press. Those are our upper body pushing muscles. Pulling would be our upper body pulling muscles. Okay, we could do a chin-up, a one-arm row, cable rows. Our hip dominant exercises are going to be the back of our legs. All right, those are the exercises that use the hips as the primary fulcrum. Okay, so that's like a deadlift, a glute bridge, a single leg deadlift, anything that involves kind of sticking your butt out like a bad dance move and using your hips as the hinge. That's what we're talking about there. Knee dominant exercises are the opposite. Those are exercises that are more what we call axial or vertical in nature. With the knee dominant exercise, the knee is going to bend a little bit more or as much as the hip. So we have some stuff like step ups, squats, lunges. Those are things that are going to work the front of the legs and that are more quad dominant. Right? So we call them knee dominant because in that situation, the knee is going to act at least 50-50 with the hips or more as the hinge. So movements versus muscles. All right, how do we distinguish these two things? Okay, we have a traditional training program at the top, which is like a back and bicep routine, and we're just comparing time periods here. So we have a rest for 2 minutes, and we're doing 4 exercises here. So for the upper back, we're doing a lat pull down, okay, and you just rest for 2 minutes. In total, that's going to take up around 6 minutes of time. It's more like 7 to 8 minutes if you account for the time that you spend actually doing the exercise. So we go through all of these exercises, and we're looking at 24 minutes per workout. Okay, we could get all this stuff in 24 minutes, and that's fairly time efficient. But if we look at a full body routine, all right, we say circuit A. Okay, we have push-ups as A1. Okay, we have a hip dominant, a deadlift as A2. And we go back and forth between these 2 exercises, all right? And then we rest for around 60 to 90 seconds between each, or after we do both. Okay, we have, so in 6 minutes we've completed 2 exercises versus 1. All right, and then we move on to circuit B, where we have a one-arm dumbbell row and a step up. All right, and we can see that we get done with the same number of exercises in around half the time. So this is a revelation in the sense that we can pack a lot more stuff into the same routine. So even if you are doing a back and bicep routine, circuiting it out in that manner where we do, say, maybe a upper back exercise followed by a bicep exercise, you're going back and forth between the 2, and you have A1, A2 versus just the 1 exercise, you're able to pack a lot more in, and that density is what the client pays for. That, that's the money right there, is being smart about how we can pack as much stuff and make the workout as time efficient as we possibly can. So order. We arrange our circuits in arranging our circuits in this way is going to allow for more time efficient training. All right, we want to place the most important exercises first, to the least important exercises last, and that's why we always start with strength and then we do conditioning. We want to do strength when we're fairly fresh, and we want to put the most important exercises first. So we have our main lifts that we're going to do in circuit A. All right, so if your goal is to get stronger or strengthen your upper body pushing, or improve your leg strength because you're a football player. All right, we would focus on maybe a back squat and a bench press, okay, for our circuit A. We're going to go very heavy in those exercises, and we're going to do maximal strength training with those. Then when we move to circuit B, we use more what we call auxiliary exercises that are a little bit more, that are a little lighter in nature, that are more endurance oriented, simply because we have fatigued at that point. We can't expect to do the same rep ranges and get the same results because we just don't have as much gas left in the tank. So it's always putting the most important thing first, and that could be anything. If you're working in your triceps, put tricep extensions first, whatever you want. But do the most important thing first, and then set that order in that way. So a couple of notes for exercise selection. If the goal is to improve strength in a certain area, avoid exercises that work the same body part as back-to-back exercise. So we don't want to do like a push-up followed by like a bench dumbbell press. If you're trying to train for hypertrophy, and make that muscle grow, then you could certainly do that. But if strength is the goal, then we want to avoid those two things. We could also perform, so generally, if you're doing an upper body workout, you could perform a push followed by a pull. So we would do like a bench press or a dumbbell press followed by a one-arm row or a chin-up. The other alternative is to do upper and lower body exercises to avoid just fatigue in that specific area. I'll say that for body composition clients, for clients that are looking to lose body fat, I really like total body workouts because it forces the client to shuttle blood throughout the body, and it is true full body circuit training. It's more metabolic in nature, and you can guarantee that if that weight is heavy whatsoever, it's going to force that client to really use all of their muscles and be out of breath. And even for clients that have gone through, cardiac patients or issues with their heart, doing these full body workouts is going to improve blood circulation. And that's one reason why with new deconditioned clients or new clients that we're training, we're always doing full body workouts even before we move to a body part split, because that's the type of program that's going to get them into better shape. The other part of it is that we want to include filler exercises such as things like balancing on one leg, wall slides, mobility drills as active rest as the client is recovering. So time efficient training. Okay, let's put this together. So say we're doing an upper body split. Okay, we have our A1, A2, A3, which is our filler exercise. A1, we're doing a push-up. Okay, so push exercise. Maybe this is beginner. They don't have their bench press yet, so we're trying to perfect the push-up by getting them to the ground before we move to that. A2 would be working what we call the antagonist or the opposite muscle. All right, the one-arm row would be the antagonist to a bench press or a push-up. Our filler exercise would be a plank. So we're working on upper body strength, but we're also working on stability of the core. So, if we did our assessment on that client, we see that that's their particular area of need, we could certainly insert that into their circuit to address that issue. For full body, we do a push-up followed by a deadlift, and then again we can throw our plank in. So in either situation, the filler exercise is great. You just have to figure out which is most applicable to who you're working with. What I like to do is for clients that are new, I'm always doing full body workouts first, and then I might move to something like an upper lower total split for clients that are maybe a little bit more experienced. They have body composition goals, whatever it may be. But we always start full body. So some advantages of circuit training, why it works, in my opinion. Number one is it's going to save you a lot of time, and it's going to make your workouts more efficient. You're going to be able to get in a lot more than you ever thought you could, all right, to the point where you're going to need to put in more work into the session, to make sure it does take up that hour. So, and that's a good thing. It allows us to expand what we offer. Number two is aerobic conditioning. The other part of doing circuit training, moving from one exercise to the next very quickly, is that it's hard. The client is not going to be used to this, And for them, in the beginning, the clients that have never done this before, they're going to be out of breath, and this will also be a cardiovascular workout to them. So it's going to build endurance both in their muscles and in their cardiovascular system, and it's going to teach our deconditioned clients that have never really worked hard in their lives to work hard. All right, and that's my biggest thing. When you work with me, you are going to know what it is to train at the end of that session, because we're going to have squeezed out every physical minute that we could. And that's my thing, is that I want the client to understand what it's like to work really hard, because everything after that becomes easier as a result. So we can work on multiple issues, not just the strength, not just the conditioning. We can address posture, we can address whatever we want while the client's resting. So this gives you almost a canvas to paint on, and they say a good training session is an art form, and hopefully this is starting to paint a picture for you. So our exercise order, just to reiterate here, our main lifts are going to be the focus of the session. So whatever you do first needs to be the most important things. And generally those are going to be big multi-joint exercises for full body workouts, such as things like chin-ups and front squats. They work the most amount of muscles possible, and those are the things that are going to kind of get us the best bang for our buck. Whereas auxiliary lifts are going to be complementary in nature. Okay, they're still they're still working a lot of muscles, but they're a bit more single joint nature. Right? If you're doing machine type training with your client, the auxiliary lifts would be the place to put them. But even for bodybuilders, that are doing a body part split, if they're doing their hamstrings and their calves that day, they're going to start out with a big bang exercise like a deadlift, and then move to more isolation based training. So our complementary lifts, it's fairly similar to concept. I say a one arm dumbbell press, one leg deadlift, X-band walk. So more single leg exercises, more things that are working on balance, proprioception, things that don't necessarily involve maximal strength, but are still going to get a training effect, and work on issues that the client is dealing with at that time. So our training split would be fairly simple. All right, day one, we're in a full body workout. We have an upper body push, an upper body pull, a knee dominant, and a hip dominant. Over the course of a week, that would be workout A and workout B. Okay, so if we had a 3-day client, we might do workout A on Monday, workout B on Wednesday, and then do A on day 3, okay, on Friday. And then the next week we'd flip it. We'd do B. But we have our exercises plugged in. So on day 1 for the pull, we have a 1-arm row. On day 2, we have an inverted bar row. So and you'll notice with this, what I like to do from day to day is not only change. We're still working exercises in the same categories, but you'll see that, like with the knee dominant, for example, we have a split squat, which is more of a single leg exercise, versus the front squat, which is a double leg exercise. All right, for the pull, we have a 1-arm row on day 1, and then we have an inverted bar row, which is a 2-arm exercise on day 2. So, the variables for the way that you can change this stuff include the tempo of the exercise, how your appendages are moving, whether you're using one arm or two. So there's a lot of different ways that we can change these basic exercises into things that, provide variety but are still getting a training effect. And for beginner clients, or the majority of the people that we train, we're going to do a workout A and a workout B. We'll do a workout C occasionally, but that's going to be for more experienced clients. We change exercises about every 3 to 4 weeks, all right? And the reason that is because we want the client to understand what they're doing and to get stronger. In reality, we want it to be interesting, and that's part of the art of a training session, is knowing what to change and knowing what to keep the same. But the strength stuff stays the same, because we want them to be able to see that in week 1, they were doing 30 pounds in their 1-arm row. In week 3, they were doing 45 pounds. So that's a substantial increase, and it's something that is going to directly impact their results, as opposed to, say, changing it per session. The other part is fillers. All right, our filler exercises allow us to address whatever needs that the client has. It definitely allows us to increase training density and start to address some of the things that we found maybe in their movement screen, okay, deficiencies that they had. I like to break down my fillers, the main ones that I use, in my exercise library. I actually have a quote-unquote filler category into just these basic sections. So we have flexibility, mobility, rehab and core, strength and body part, and balance. All right, if the client is looking to tone a certain muscle. Okay, maybe I'm putting like a bicep curl as their filler. The client is, has an ankle sprain, okay, or is an athlete recovering from a lower body injury. I might have them doing some sort of a single leg balance exercise. If there's an issue, if they're weak in their core, they'll be doing planks or side planks. If they have a flexibility issue, if they lack external rotation of their left hip, then we'll have them doing some drill that is going to be addressing those things. But, we just look at what deficiencies exist, and then we're going to plug those in as filler exercises. So number 4, conditioning. Conditioning is what can change. All right, we talk about variety in a training session and having things that are the same versus different. Conditioning exercises can change every session, because the thing is, we want our strength exercises to remain the same, and we want the client to progress. We want them to become as efficient as possible and stronger in each exercise. Conditioning is the exact opposite. All right, we want people to be inefficient. We don't want them to be able to do the same stuff, because the body will adapt to that. So we want to stay fairly basic in what we're doing, because they're going to be fatigued at this point. But changing the patterns fairly frequently is actually going to improve the training effects. So my first question before we get into that, though, is, does the client need conditioning at all? If they're going through the session and they're huffing and puffing, they're covered in sweat, they smell terrible, and it's just it's not a good situation for anybody. Chances are, if you do conditioning with them on day 1, they're going to go over the edge anyway. So is the session conditioning? Okay, and if not, then we put the conditioning in, but it's only when we need it. All right, and for the first several weeks, for somebody that's not working out, the reality is the session will probably be the conditioning itself. So that's definitely something that we need to keep in consideration. We want to use conditioning to teach our clients how to do work. And when I say conditioning, I want the clients know what that means. Okay, that's the red zone. I want them to be working as hard as possible and take themselves to levels that they didn't think were possible. And that's why they come to a trainer. They're not gonna bust their asses to the degree that they could alone. All right, but they will with you, and that's why we have to give them the appropriate stimuli. So when we look at conditioning, we're basically talking about 3 types of conditioning. All right, and these relate to the basic energy systems. We're not going to get too much into this, but for our basic purposes, we have alactic, anaerobic, and aerobic conditioning. Alactic is whatever happens in 10 to 20 seconds. Okay, these are extremely short, extremely intense intervals. All right, and these are 10 to 20 second bursts or less, 5 to 15 seconds even. These are things that are going to be the hardest thing possible. The client has to, in order for it to truly be that, the client has to give maximal effort. So this is not something that we're doing with them unless they're fairly experienced. Anaerobic is going to be anything from 30 seconds to 3 minutes. Okay, so this is something that's more moderate in nature, but it's still pretty hard. And it's something where, again, the client should not be able to sustain that exercise for more than this period of time. If they are, then what you're doing is an aerobic exercise, because aerobic is going to be anything over this 3 minute period. We have time circuits, we have longer interval circuits where we maybe do 4 exercises of 60 seconds each back to back. If it's truly anaerobic, and we're doing 30-second intervals, your client needs to be physically gassed after 30 seconds. They need a rest period in order to recover, because it's been that hard. But if it's not, then the conditioning is probably more aerobic. And with personal training clients, we're going more to the aerobic side because it's what they need. We only start to go higher, as the client gains this basic conditioning. But we always look aerobic, and then we kind of move up this ladder. So just some basic examples. For alactic, a good example would be Tabata intervals. All right, and this is something that is not even really alactic in nature. If we really wanted to make it alactic, we would do like 5 seconds of work followed by 90 seconds of rest, but we don't really have that kind of a time. So an example that I guess is more applicable to our general population would be Tabata intervals. All right, and this is something that is popular in the fitness world. That's going to be 20 seconds of work followed by 10 seconds of rest. In order to really make that happen, you need to pick something that you can execute as quickly as possible. So a squat is a good exercise. A airdyne sprint is a great exercise. A fan bike, we like that a lot. A power clean is not a good exercise because there are too many moving parts. It's too complex. Pick basic things for that. Push-ups are a good example because they're easy to execute. Generally with Tabatas, we're going to pick 1 to 2 exercises, and we're going to perform that exercise for anywhere from 6 to 8 rounds. So we're looking at about 4 minutes. If your client is really working hard, they're going to be physically gassed after that. All right, that is going to be one of the hardest things that they will do, but it's something that you have to build up to. If the client doesn't have the work capacity to do this, it's very easy to screw up and just do half-assed, and there's no purpose in doing it if they're doing it that way. So that's why I say, don't start out with that. Simply because they've never taken themselves there and they don't really know what it is to get to these higher heart rates yet. So we want to start a little easier. Anaerobic would be lactic intervals, all right, anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes, but generally for the general population, we're going 30 to 60 second intervals. For us, we're going to choose 3 to 5 exercises and perform these back to back. So these are a little bit not extremely high in intensity, but fairly high. I mean, moderate to high in nature, and again, simple things. So we have something like a push press, an air squat, and a mountain climber performed back to back. Those are things that are easy to execute. They can be performed at variable speeds, and the client knows those things by now. All right. And finally, we have our aerobic circuits, and I would also classify our interval training as aerobic if we are somebody for a newer client, because they're going to be moving at a slower speed, and it's just going to be an easier thing for them. All right. Once they truly know what it is to get to these higher heart rates that are anaerobic, then we might put in a little bit more rest periods between these things. All right, but for the first sort of thing that we like to start our clients out with are time circuits. All right, and time circuits are just choosing 3 to 5 exercises and performing anywhere from 6 to 8 reps back to back. And the reason that I like time circuits is that they are variable. All right, they allow us to scale. They allow the client to self-select their intensity. Meaning, what we say is, if you get in 3 rounds, I want you to perform these 3 exercises back to back as a circuit. If you get in 3 rounds in week 1, that's your baseline. But if you can get in 6 rounds in week 3, you're in better shape because you've packed more work into the same amount of time. And it's an easy thing to explain, but it allows the client to stop and rest, and get their breath or whatever it may be. Whereas with an interval, they feel pressure to go balls to the wall, and that might lead to puking or blacking out, or just not necessarily something that is very likely to happen. But the time circuit is just a little bit more scaled to comfort level in the very beginning. So that's why I like it, and I feel like it's something that allows the client to still work up a sweat, but maybe not to the degree that they're going to pass out or be nauseous. And that's going to be important when you're selling this stuff in the very beginning. If the client's puking day 1, that's not a good sign. They're probably not going to come back. So just consider that when you're choosing whatever format that you're with. So our conditioning progression. All right, month 1 for a client that is completely deconditioned, has not worked out in a very long time. All right, the aerobic training is the session itself. All right, again, you can look at the visible indicators. Is the client moving through the exercises very well during their strength training and power training, or are they already covered in sweat after the dynamic warm-up? I've had clients that literally could not get through the dynamic warm-up. I mean, it was that bad. It took 30 minutes to do that, and I was thinking, God, what do I do? But what you do is you do the session, and then when you add a little on and you add a little on until you need conditioning. So we move to month 2. Now, okay, the client is getting through the sessions fine, okay, and they're ready to step things up. So now we're going to move to a time circuit, all right, because the time circuit is, the first step. And then once they have that, and they're used to getting their heart rates up to maybe this aerobic level, around 120 to 150 beats a minute, then we can start to do this interval progression where we go from, maybe these longer intervals where they're doing more moderate things to these shorter intervals where, they're at a higher intensity level and spiking their heart rate up and down. So we don't want to, I guess the the moral of this story is we don't want to take our clients to the highest heart rate possible on day one. We want to get it aerobic first, and then kind of build that base and go up as we progress. So this also leads us into a discussion about exercise selection. I have been extremely guilty in my career of choosing things just because they are the hardest thing possible and what I call now punishing the client. And that's really not what it's about. I want to give the client things that are going to do the job, but it's minimal effective dose. All right, I want to give them things minimum that are going to get them there, not that are going to put them over the edge and the rest of their day sucks because their head is ringing. So instead of doing a plyo push-up for a new client, we might do something like an inchworm, okay? Or rather than doing a jump squat, we might do like a glute bridge, all right? So just look at your circuit and think, okay, in the beginning with a new client, we're doing 30-second intervals or 90-second or whatever it may be, okay? And we have 4 exercises. Make one exercise the catalyst. Make one exercise really hard, okay? Let that get their heart rate up, and then use the other 3 to do things that involve maybe prehab. Do glute bridges, do band walks, band pullbacks. While their heart rate is coming down, they're still going to be getting a training effect, but at that time, that's all that you need. All right, and then as they progress, add another hard exercise until you can literally get them through a circuit where everything is hard. So an example, okay, so we have and really for me, I like to use common implements that you'll find around the gym for a hard to easy transition. So say you want to do a push press with your client. Why can't they hold on to a foam roller rather than using a barbell? They're both the same shape, and if they get the same training effect, then what does it really matter? We're not really trying to work the muscles in that situation. We're really just trying to get to get their heart rate to a certain place. So that's an example of sparing them versus trying to push them over the edge. So we have a kettlebell jump as our hard exercise. Maybe we have them hold a stability ball and swing it instead. Okay, instead of doing a medicine ball slam, maybe we're slamming a stability ball, or doing a walking lunge with a barbell raised over our head. Again, maybe we're using the foam roller. So just whatever tool is available to do the job. There's no shame in using this stuff. I mean, if it gets a training effect and it's safe, especially for clients that are paying you, or for anyone. Bottom line, but certainly for one-on-one personal training clients, then do what is necessary, no more. So common sense intensity. All right, when we're talking about conditioning, all right, we have light, medium, and heavy. All right, like I was saying with the circuit stuff, in the very beginning when a client starts, the conditioning is going to be light in nature. Okay, it's going to be circuit based. It's self-selected, meaning the person might be going really hard that day. They might be at 75%. They might be down at 50%, but they're doing something. And whatever, maybe they didn't sleep last night, and that's all that they can do for that day. It's still going to get a training effect because it's easier to get their heart rate up, but it's something that they can do within their comfort zone. All right, medium would be interval training, something that's going to be moderate and continuous. Okay, so we have body weight exercises, agility drills. We have weight training, and then we have high intensity. Okay, and this is interval training with explosive and ballistic movements. All right, and this relates to not only how hard we're performing the exercise, but the type of things that we choose. All right, if the person is truly experienced and we're going really hard that day, we want them at 80 to 95% of max heart rate. If for medium, we're looking at 85%. For light, 50 to 75. They're all going to do a job, but we just have to figure out, what are we trying to get that day, and what state is the client in that day as well. And finally, our fifth section, okay, and this comes at the end because this stuff is not least important, but we can do this in a state of fatigue. It doesn't really matter. Everything is fatigued at this point, so we're performing core and prehab. All right, this is where, again, we're focusing on specific stabilizer muscles and working on just little imbalances the clients may have. And we're looking at like the external rotators of the hips, the shoulder external rotators, upward rotation of the shoulders, core stability, things of that nature. All right, and again, we just scale for the individual. All right, for some of our higher level clients in the plank, we like to do things like stability ball stirs, where their elbows are on the plank or on the ball and they're stirring while maintaining stable core. All right, we have things like YTWs over a ball. Okay, we have glute bridges over a ball. and we have things where, again, the client is lying on their back. For many of our female clients that have had C-sections, we like to have them brace and press into the floor while they're squeezing the ball to kind of activate their inner core, their Kegel muscles. So a lot of different uses and a lot of different things that we can do. For us, we're just kind of picking a standard model. These are the categories that we look at when we think about prehab. All right, so we have anterior core, which is going to be the front of the abs. We have posterior core, which is the glutes, the butt. We have lateral core, which would be the lateral flexion, anti-rotation. We have the lateral hip, which we call hip prehab, and those are things like sideline clams. And then we have upper body prehab, okay, and that's again the shoulder external rotators and upward rotation. And we use a plug and play model with this, right? We're just simply going to choose one drill from these, from each category, and just perform them as a circuit back to back. All right, it's important that we choose the right ones, but again, you look at where the client is, and the main thing though is that we're working these categories. All right, we find the appropriate level for the clients, and we perform these things just as we would strength training and conditioning, just back to back as a circuit. So putting everything together, all right, we've talked about all of our sections. Now we want to talk about how it looks. All right, it's just a simple back-to-back menu. All right, first we start with power, 2 sets of 5. We talk about our main lifts. We go to our main lifts, which are the heaviest thing that we're doing that day, the hardest thing that we're doing that day, and that's going to take up the bulk of our strength training time. We move to auxiliary lifts, where again we're using lighter weights in nature, more endurance-based exercises, and then we're going to end the session with conditioning and prehab. And the majority of your time is really going to be spent with strength training, as it should be. The power work really it's quick in nature. That's what it's about, so it doesn't take much time at all. Our main lifts are going to require the most rest and recovery, so we do that with them. That's going to take longer. Our auxiliary lifts are again going to take some time as well. Conditioning, we're looking at maybe 10 minutes, and then prehab is the same thing. But as you can see in our illustration, we have time periods assigned to each of these. Okay, so we know exactly when we move on. And what I like to do is actually set a clock for this time period. Like for power, you see I've allocated 5 minutes here. I'll literally set a clock for 5 minutes. If I get through 1.5 sets with this person, I simply move on to the next thing. All right, and this allows me to ensure that, especially if I'm training a group, that all right, I got in what I needed to get in. Maybe we didn't get the full stuff in that day, but to keep the session moving, I simply move on to the next thing. So to wrap everything up, session logistics. Number 1, teach your client a standard foam rolling and a warm-up routine. All right, I'm a big believer in routine, and I think that the more regimented we can make this, the better we're going to be. I want it to be interesting, and I want the client to have a great experience, but at the same time, I don't want to spend the majority of my time explaining versus training. So it's extremely valuable to me that we can just kind of outsource this stuff to that person, so we can spend the majority of our time with them doing power and strength work, which is most important. All right, what I like to do is ask the client to show up 5 to 10 minutes before the session to do these things. Some people will, and some people won't. All right, and that's if they don't show up to roll, I'm going to absolutely have them do their dynamic warm up, regardless of whether they just want to jump in or not. All right, but going back to the first point, they know what to do, so that's going to be valuable. We also teach our clients to log exercises to understand what they're doing. Some people will buy into this, the introverted client that we talk about. Some people won't, all right? And it's an optional thing with our clients. So, a lot of people like doing this, and I think there's a lot of value in doing it because they can see tangible progress. So I'm a big believer in that. And you want to put that up front. You get to know the client a little bit, figure out what motivates them. If seeing tangible signs of their progress is something that that lights their fire, then definitely teach them the log exercises. If not, make a note in your chart, really, and that's all that you have to do. It's not really that important to teach them if it's an uphill battle. And for 30-minute clients, all right, if you ever are forced to train clients for 30 minutes, you need to start to thinking about outsourcing things. Okay, so core, conditioning, warm up. These are things that can be performed before or after the session. The majority of your time should be spent doing strength training and conditioning as well. All right, all of the other stuff you can teach your client to do, have them show up before or after the session and execute those things. They're not really paying you to hold their hand while they're doing a glute bridge. All right, they're paying you to get them stronger. They're paying you to get them in better shape. So that's what you need to be doing. All right, if you have an hour, then those are luxuries that they have time for, but you just have to kind of think about what you're working with. And what I like about this concept is you can just kind of reallocate your time based upon what you've got going on. So the takeaways, all right, always plan ahead. Organize workouts and circuits, train movements versus muscles. We talked about that. Plan exercises 4 to 8 weeks in advance. Again, most important point in this presentation, because that's all about a long-term approach versus a session-to-session thing. The client doesn't know A from B when they come in. All right, they don't really have any expectations. All right, you are the expert. You need to dictate those expectations, and if they do, you say, look, this is how I work. All right, I don't think this approach is for everybody, but if I'm going to devote my time to 8 weeks with you, I need to know that you're going to be there. Okay, so to do this session by session, I know that you're enthusiastic now, but we need to set a long-term goal, or we know what we're doing. You've already set that goal. I want you to put your money where your mouth is. All right. With templates, it's going to give us, and the beauty of the template really in summary is it gives us a way to make spot corrections. If the person did have an injury that day or something went wrong or whatever it may be, we can simply sub in another exercise from that category. So rather than doing a bench press for their upper body push, we could reduce it to a push-up, or we could use something else. And these templates are going to help us to make these spot changes without having to come up with an entirely new workout. And there's a ton of value in that. And I think as a trainer, it helps us to do our job better and train more clients efficiently.